No, he's
We need to excuse Mr. Hackney and
Mr. Barfield.
Commissioner Barfield.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Is Luke?
Luke's here, he's in there getting some coffee, yeah.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Dr. Cannon, on you for the minutes.
We have the minutes from our January 11th meeting in the packet and available for approval.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Any public comments? No, ma'am. Okay, thank you. All right. Turn it over to you.
As our consultant comes to the podium, I'd like to introduce him for our presentation. Jeff Atkins is a professional engineer with more than 30 years in the water and wastewater utility business. He has a long history in working with and guiding utilities through consolidation, including work with Central Piedmont Utilities. He's been both on the private side of the utility business and the public side. And I personally have had a long work history with Jeff and have a great deal of respect for him. So he's going to walk us through an update of the consolidation study.
Thank you, Ken. Good morning, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Hopefully this can be informative for you as we give you some information on the status of this utility consolidation study between the authority and the town of Wrightsville Beach. We're providing a similar report to the town's board later today. Before we get going, I just wanted to acknowledge that HDR, Reftelis Financial Consultants, and Highfield Infrastructure Engineering are working together to complete this study for you. We kicked off in October with a study team that was comprised of representatives from the leadership staff for the authority in the town, 2 liaison board members from each organization, and the consultant team. Mr. Sneeden, thank you to you and Mr. Hackney for your engagement and the time you've dedicated to being a part of the study, offering your experience and your perspectives to help the authority and the town determine together whether it's feasible and in your mutual interest to bring the town's water and wastewater utility into the authority system. Our study is running parallel but separate from Reftelis's rate work for the authority, which has been extremely helpful. That synergy has been extremely helpful to really working through some of the financial analysis details. The authority and town's representatives have some success factors that are goals for this work. We want a win-win outcome for both organizations and your customers. We want a fair and reasonable final agreement. And we're aiming for a dependable, financially feasible, long-term water source for the town. So what do we mean when we talk about utility consolidation? I want to bring 4 basic principles up front for you to keep in mind as this study continues in the coming months. The first is there have been similar utility consolidations in North Carolina, and those can be a guide for us. Ken mentioned some of those examples. The second to keep in mind is that if this utility consolidation is executed, the town's customers are going to become the authority's customers individually, and with the same service expectations that the rest of your customers have. This is complicated work with some things that can't be implemented until a decision is made by the authority in the town to move forward with the utility consolidation. So in order to accommodate that and to make the transition smooth, there'll be a transition period that'll be established in the agreement to accomplish some things that are appropriate to start after that handshake on the agreement. And then the fourth item is that you'll see several points of discussion in this presentation about the costs of integrating the town's utility system into the authority system. That work is significant in cost, and those costs would be recovered by a financial strategy that involves the difference between the cost of delivering services to the town and how that revenue is generated by the town today versus what it's going to be when the town adopts CFPUA's rate structure. Those costs are going to include pipeline infrastructure, equipment, services, not just building things, but also working out some technical details to make the systems compatible. So the town and the authority staff are working together now to define what those projects are. When we do the financial analysis, we're going to create a financial pro forma, and that pro forma is a model that allows us to define what the specifics of cost recovery are. And Reftelis is working with us on that task as well. Finally, I wanted to mention that this feasibility study was funded by the North Carolina Division of Water Infrastructure by a grant, and so that provides the basis for all of this to be explored. They are encouraging regionalization whenever it's feasible. So we're currently proceeding in the study along several concurrent tracks. We're really in the heart of things right now. The first of those is developing a capital improvements plan for the consolidation with projects which interconnect the town system with the authorities, ensure that the town's facilities are compatible with the authority standards and with regulatory requirements, and projects that address the need to rehabilitate aging infrastructure. The study also evaluates the operational and organizational considerations which come into play if the utility changes hands. Things like property transfers, customer service, and town utility staff who may come with the utility to help operate the utility in the future as CFPUA employees. The next element of the study is a draft utility consolidation agreement, working from a model that's been established by some of those prior utility consolidations. The agreement's going to document decisions that are made in the negotiations that are happening between the authority and the town. The fourth element study is a financial analysis of utility consolidation. We'll speak about that more coming up. The study's final report brings all of these elements together. The town and the authority are working in good faith to try to find that win-win. When the report is prepared, it will document the assessment, what activities have been done, as well as areas that remain to be settled in negotiation, along with a recommended path forward. This graphic illustrates the project schedule from kickoff through the final report. You can see here the study's concurrent tasks that are helping to define the issues and the solutions. And the triangles represent workshops where we're coming together with both organizations to try to work through some of these issues and do some of the heavy lifting in the same place together. Today's board updates for the authority and the town are happening at the study's midpoint. We have another round of updates planned at the conclusion of the study. The financial analysis may be the study's most important element. So I'd like to spend a little bit more time, give you some more information on that. Reftelis is building an Excel-based pro forma financial model. And that model is going to allow us to run scenarios of different levels of capital investment, different durations of cost recovery, and ranges of expected expenses and revenues. That model is helping us define the revenues and the duration which help us recover the utility consolidation costs. The study's in its early phases on the financial side, and some of the model inputs aren't yet defined. But there are key observations I wanted to pass along so you can be aware of some of the things driving the financial requirements for utility consolidation. What makes a good business case? So the first is that the town is nearly built out. I mean, if you drive through Wrightsville Beach, you know there are not a lot of open lots ready to be developed. The town anticipates occasional isolated parcel development or redevelopment. They do not anticipate changing their development policies in a way that creates high rises and dramatically changes their current water use profile. The town uses a little bit more than 0.8 million gallons a day on an average day, but it's highly seasonal. In the summertime, significantly more. They're not expecting a lot more growth. For future planning purposes, we're estimating around 1 million gallons a day might be their long-range maximum for water demand. On the wastewater side, that long-term maximum is increasing perhaps a tenth on the average wastewater flow to around 0.6, 0.7 million gallons a day. Another important element that we see right now is that from initial analysis, the towns and CFPUA's revenue or rate structures differ, but the revenue generated from the rate structure that's applied by the town in its rates versus the town if they use CFPUA rates, about the same amount of revenue. This is in part because the work that's being done now to review and update the authority's wholesale rate structure hasn't been completed yet and implemented. That will change the factor and provide more of a space between the two revenues. Finally, that work by Reftelis to define wholesale rates is going on right now and is really a key part for us as we're looking overall at this study. So that synergy between two separate projects has been really helpful in our timing. Highfill, our sub-consultant, is working with the authority in the town now to define a utility consolidation capital plan. And we wouldn't want to really dwell too long on the exact projects and costs that are presented on this slide. What I wanted to do was just show you where we are right now in an ongoing negotiation process. So these projects, the values associated with each of them, that's where work is happening right now. But what I did want you to take away is that the town has prepared studies over the last 5 years to help define where we are today, what kind of things are going to be necessary to integrate the two systems and form the basis for the capital plan that we're working on. Second thing I wanted you to take away is that the slate of projects we ultimately include in the agreement are going to be representing both water and wastewater infrastructure and representing both new pipes in the ground as well as replacement and rehab of aging infrastructure. Some of the projects that are going to be in this capital plan will only be associated with a scenario where the town integrates its system, consolidates with the authority. But other projects are going to be ones they would have to do anyway if they remained independent. So what's next? As I mentioned, the 4 strands of the assessment are happening concurrently, and each of those strands needs to be completed. Drafts have been submitted for 3 of the deliverables associated with the study, which are currently being reviewed by authority staff and town staff. These include memos documenting the infrastructure needs, an evaluation of the considerations, their organizational and operational, and a draft utility consolidation agreement. The financial pro forma study is earlier on in its analysis, but we have had an initial workshop on that. That's where the efforts and energy are going to be most valuable right now. So we're prioritizing the financial pro forma model setup, and other tasks may pause just to make room for completing that financial analysis in the short term. After CFPUA and the town complete the feasibility assessment, you'll have an opportunity to decide whether to continue with utility consolidation. Does the business case exist for both the town and the authority to do that? If the authority and the town decide to proceed, then there'll be final negotiations on the term of the agreement, and potentially within a short period, the agreement would be ready to be submitted for both boards to consider and potentially approve this utility consolidation. After the agreement's executed, there will be that transition period that I mentioned, with specific activities that need to be completed. The transition period could be 6 months, could be longer. Currently, it looks like the most likely long lead item driving the length of that transition period would be modification of the town's customer meters, which need to be modified to be made compatible with CFPUA's existing billing system. The transition period exists so that the transfer itself from the town to the authority can be as smooth as possible. As these preparations are completed in the transition period, the town continues to be the one responsible for operating the utility. When these items are completed, then responsibility for operating the system becomes the authorities, and the town's customers become the authority's customers. One last thing before I close, I'm asked a lot of times a little bit more information about what kind of things need to be done in order to work through the details of transferring utilities. And so I want to just close with a few of the potential activities which might happen during the transition period. These represent things that I've seen in other consolidations. A unique list for the town and the authority is in the process of being compiled. So your list may not be this list, but these are certainly some things I think apply. One of the most important activities between now and during the transition period is proactive communication with the town's utility customers. It's going to be a disorienting time for them, and they're going to need to hear both from the authority and the town with reassurances and factual and timely information as they work through this process so they can become engaged customers for you. One of the other activities is transfers of property and easements, utility permits, and other things that are contractually set up to maintain the town's utility. There'll be programming and equipment modifications for SCADA, so that the town's SCADA system to monitor and control the infrastructure of the utility is compatible with the authority system. The water meter adapter and the billing system preparations to bring 2,800 new meters into your system for billing. Water and sewer assets need to be brought into the authority's GIS and maintenance management systems. If employees do in fact transfer from the town to the authority to help operate the system in the future, then there's HR-related activities. And a general training activity to make sure that the town provides the information to the authority to understand how to operate their utility facilities. So I hope that overview has been helpful, and I'll be glad to take any questions that you've got.
The list that you provided up there, sir, that showed the capital improvement from 17 to 22, have any of those projects been implemented, been completed?
So the town has done some initial preparations to define the condition of the sewer system in one of their areas. That helped pave the way to know what kind of rehabilitation work needed to be done. So that's a precursor activity to some of the things listed there. Those are all future activities, although the town is looking at some further definition of their water system and rehabilitation needs, which is a project on here which could be sort of taken out, done before the transfer in order to better define the existing condition of the water system.
Would that CIP become CFPUA, part of CFPUA CIP?
Right. If those projects aren't completed before consolidation, then those projects would be performed by the authority and the costs recovered from the town customers as a part of their rates that they pay until those costs are paid off.
So that wouldn't affect our rates or our CIP?
So I'm not a rate professional, but I mean, I certainly think any debt that you take on is part of the rate evaluations.
And I don't know if this question goes beyond where you went, but at the end of the day, after everything, let's just say everything worked out and they're all customers of ours and what have you, they will have rates similar to the rates that we charge our existing ratepayers and the consideration we give each year. They would fall into that.
That is an element of the agreement to be negotiated. But the idea is that 20, way down the road, 20 years from now, whatever the time is, once these expenses are paid off, after that time frame of cost recovery is completed, they would be indistinguishable from your other customers.
Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just, if I could add to that, I think the intent is that once consolidation takes place, that Wrightsville Beach will be charged the same basic rates and usage rates as all of our other customers. They will be normal customers. There will be a supplemental rate added to that to fund the cost of those CIP items. So that's expected to take place over a period of time, maybe 10 years. But that way, That's how those costs are accounted for, is it will be a supplemental rate for the town of Wrightsville Beach ratepayers.
Is this something from our structure that we have to go back to parents for their blessing? Okay.
Yes.
And the last one, this is the first time that the CFPUA is bringing in another municipality. I mean, we only have 4 in the county. Has there been any talk of adding a member to this board to represent Wrightsville Beach?
So that is an area that has been identified for further discussion, but we've tabled that question as we work on the financial questions.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner
I'm
Miller.
sure this is an HR function. When the county and city formed CFPUA, there were differences in salaries for employees. I assume that'll be looked at, as well as retirement plans for those that work at Wrightsville Beach that may be brought in here. And how does that flesh out?
Right, all of those things would need to be considered. At this point, the town's utility operation is very small. There are 8 staff positions that are in the budget. 5 of those positions are filled right now. So my recollection is that none of those employees have been there more than 5 years. So I think the process needs to be very similar to what was done when the formation of the authority brought in employees from the county and the city. But I expect that the financial elements of it will be on a much smaller scale.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Jeff, have you, I know this may be preliminary, but have you worked up any estimates of what the average bill would be during the recovery period?
So that is a fundamental question that we haven't tackled yet, because the Reftella study is helping us to basically create the model, and that's one of the inputs that they're working on right now. But that's exactly what that pro forma model is there to do.
That's going to be the sticking point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Madam Chair. Sir,
Yes, sir.
the water meter conversion, it says keep existing meter and change the transmitter. Can you kind of explain that a little bit more in depth for me?
Sure thing. So the town had recently replaced the meters, the 2,800 meters that they had provided for their customers to read their consumption. Meters have a lot of different options about how they're constructed, but there's a body, there's a readout, and there's potentially transmission of that information if you have if your structure's set up that way. Because of the investment that was recently made by the town, we're looking at how can we maximize that past investment and minimize the amount of cost so that it operates in a way that's compatible with the authority. That would mean replacing the top parts of the meter, but not the body of the registration, transmission, but not the actual body of the mechanical piece of the meter. And we're in a kind of evaluating alternatives at this point, but that seems to be the most promising to accomplish what we need quality-wise, but reduce cost.
Okay, thanks.
Dr. Cannon, hang on, sorry. Go in line. Dr. Cannon, you
Sure, thank you. This may be more of a question for you. How do their rates now compare to our rates? And do we anticipate that the principals who are negotiating are going to be able to communicate with ratepayers in Wrightsville Beach why the bump up in price is going to be coming their way? Do we have a sense?
So that's a 2-part question.
Yep. I was going to make it a 3-part, but
The first part of that, how do their rates compare to ours? The overall revenue, as Jeff noted, generated from applying their rates to their customers and applying CFPUA's rates to their customers is very close. It's within $100,000 or less. It's about 3.6 million and some change in applying the rate structure for CFPUA to that community. But it's a very different rate structure. So some people would see a decrease, and some people would see an increase if we applied our rate structure to that community, which is the current planned action. Overall, though, the impact is neutral. And please remind me the second question of that.
Well, I'm not sure you answered the first. Like,
Communicating.
what are their average bills compared to our average bills right now? Like, our average ratepayer has of course, ours includes some other elements, but
So our average bill is.
I'm thinking about sticker shock. I want to hear about how we're planning to deal with the sticker shock for those
Thank you.
folks over there.
Thank you for the reminder.
Sorry.
Our average bill is $69.13. And then if you live within the city, there's another essentially $37 associated with the bill. So our customer sees $106.
Let's make it clear though, the other you're talking about has nothing to do with water and sewer.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Essentially, the same amount of revenue is collected using the rate structure from Wrightsville Beach. So the average customer, when we switch over, will see $69.13. The difference is they collect the money in a different way. So some people under their rate structure actually will pay less for using the same amount of money. Some people under the rate structure will pay a little bit more. And how we communicate all of this is that if these boards, commissions, and councils collectively choose to move forward with a consolidation, we'll have to have a very detailed education program because not only will the ratepayers see a difference based on moving to new rate structures, as Mr. Sneeden noted, right now there will be a surcharge, a special charge of limited time to pay for the cost of consolidation. And we've got to communicate all of that if this goes through.
Just out of curiosity, do we know how do they pay for stormwater and trash on Wrightsville Beach? Is it a separate bill that they get now?
They bill stormwater through their water and sewer bill.
And for solid waste, do we recall?
I believe it's also part of the same. Yeah.
Solid
It's the
gas.
same. And that's also part of the negotiation. They have asked to continue that relationship in terms of what rides on the bill.
Thank you.
Yeah. I pulled up some numbers here from Rattel's presentation. A customer, residential customer that consumes 4,000 gallons a month under our rate structure would pay $68.24. That's combined water and sewer. Town of Wrightsville Beach, under their current rates, they would pay $85.88. So kind of that's, normal, kind of, lower consuming average customer is currently paying more under the Town of Wrightsville Beach rate structure compared to our rate structure.
Thank you.
Councilman Wood.
Just another question with regards to the meters. It's probably more for them than you, but if we're altering the Town of Wrightsville Beach's existing meters, is that going to affect our supply, our constrained supply of the meters that we are working with now?
So our meters department, I think, has done a yeoman's job in finding a adapter to use the census meters that are currently serving the town and adapt their transmitter to transmit to our receiving system that is a Badger-based system.
Phenomenal.
The question is, can we acquire enough of those adapters and transmitters in the transition period to retrofit 2,800 meters? So the answer is no, and there's a challenge.
Sure. It's always the answer.
Ken and Jeff, I noted every time we talk about this, we talk about in terms of if we move forward, which, in normal language and understanding would mean that there was an alternative for Wrightsville Beach getting clean, fresh, sustainable water source. I'm not aware of one. Is there another something that can fill that gap, or are we just using that as part of the negotiating, as part of the language? I just want to be clear, that's all.
Well, the other alternatives that we're exploring include the town becoming a permanent wholesale customer on the water side, as they are the wastewater side. And you'll hear a little bit more about scheduling with Mr. Sneeden's update toward the end of the meeting. But that is an option.
But anywhere they go, they will have to upgrade their infrastructure, which is the real elephant in the room in that cost. Whether we bring them on as a wholesaler or bring them on as a part of our system, that cost is going to be there. They've got to change what they're doing now, or excuse me, update what they're doing now, and we are going to be the ones that will provide the fresh water. Correct?
Well,
You could make that inference.
I mean, not necessarily. They would be looking for us as a wholesale supplier. They also have their wells on the beach that have issues, but they are still functioning. They have their own infrastructure. If the decision is made that they will be a wholesale customer, then they can operate. They can buy water from us, and they can do, manage their system however they feel is best for the beach. So they don't necessarily have to do these upgrades. We feel like they're necessary to bring it into conformance with our system standards, but they may choose to do otherwise. So it's really it's not something where they will have to spend that 26 million or so for the capital improvements. They may choose to do that on their own, but if they're a wholesale customer of ours, we're just responsible for delivering water to a point on our side of the Intracoastal Waterway, and then what they choose to do after that is their decision.
Treated water?
Treated water, yes.
Yeah. But Larry, you bring up an interesting point here, that our responsibility stops essentially, like for a homeowner, at the meter. In this case, at one side of the bridge.
It's at the meter, yeah.
But this, the second we turn on our pressurized water system, will their system, is it capable of being able to handle CFPUA pressure, et cetera, or will they immediately have pipe failures?
Well, they're already connected to our system. Yep, they're already connected. They are a customer of ours. And so, to my knowledge, that's functioning properly. So
It is. Whether they merge or remain independent, to take more water than they're currently contracted for, which is 150 million a year. And they use about 300 million. So to replace their wells with CFPUA water, they'll need new infrastructure at a minimum within their own system to allow that water to be distributed.
Larry, have they brought up the concepts of blending at all, using water from their existing wells, which I know is becoming increasingly more brackish, et cetera, and then mixing it in with our filtered water? Is that an option that they're looking at?
well, they're already doing that again, because they are buying our water. If we were to consolidate, I think it's our intention to, over a relatively short period of time, is to take those wells that they have out of service. The issue being that right now, that is a source of water on the other side of the waterway for the town. So if something were to happen to the raw water line that goes underneath the Intercoastal Waterway, they've still got water supply over there. If we were to take over the system, and take those wells offline, before we took those wells offline or in conjunction with that, we would want to have another pipe underneath the Intercoastal Waterway so that we've got two sources of supply for them. Because if something happens to the only line providing water to them and there's no wells, that means there's no domestic water and there's no fire flow over there.
So that was at $4.8 million in that laundry list that we just saw, right?
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Larry. That really helped.
I guess the big benefit from Right to Beach is a much better quality of the water. And I think their ratepayers would appreciate that, because it definitely tastes different, and not in a good way.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
So I understand that this gentleman is being hired through a grant. Is it any possibility that we'll lose money trying to acquire another municipality?
So
And how much?
the growth policy, of which we're operating under today, and we're also reviewing, directs staff to ensure that a consolidation is self-supporting. But that same policy allows the board to enter into a consolidation that isn't self-supporting if in the board's determination there are public health and safety issues associated with the consolidation. So that gives you a lot of freedom. Staff, we have to propose something that's self-supporting. But if self-supporting is cost prohibitive to the town, this board has the authority to consider the health implications to subsidize the consolidation.
Everything we're discussing now is that this will be self-supporting. You know, we're not looking at alternatives where CFPUA is subsidizing the town switchover or acquisition. So of the water and sewer system. So that I guess would only become a discussion item if it became apparent that the town couldn't absorb all of that cost. But until that point's reached, we're not going down that road. We're staying with, okay, the town will, through their surcharges, their customers will be paying the cost of the acquisition and consolidation.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you so much.
Nice job, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Any questions on that?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Moving on to new business. Linda, attorney's report?
I don't have a report, but I do need to go into closed session briefly to discuss CFPUA versus Comores.
Keyword there before you vote.
Yes.
Yes. So for your executive director's report, we have before you the key indicators report, the safety report, the environmental report, and the strategic plan. Are there any questions about those updates?
Couple of quick questions, all right, thanks. Ken, I noted in the development services in the key indicators report on page 64 that the number of inspections really jumped, and even more important, or at least caught my eye, the requests for information are dramatically up year over year and in both categories. I just bring that up as a point of good news, and really robust, and I'm delighted. So thanks again for this, sharing that information. I think that's good things says good things about the entire organization. My second question is, again, with the Southside wastewater flows on page 75. I tried to pull together from a number of different sources in the key indicator report. We see a daily average dip that is significant, down to 7.29 million gallons a day. Meanwhile, the curious part is over the month we have rainfall that's going up, that the wastewater flows are going down, and we also see a spike in the intercocci, fecal intercocci. That's all coming together. My question is, are these all related, and is there something that we should infer from these three data points?
Mr. Vandermine will share his thoughts.
Excellent observation, Commissioner Zappel. On the first point about the south side flows going down and and while rainfall's up, but the north side flow's going up. We have the great fortune to have a lot of flexibility in our system, and we had to do some maintenance over the last few months at some of our pump stations, which required us to divert flow from the north side basin to our south side plant. And last month, that work was done, and we switched the flow back. So that's why you see the decrease at south side and the increase at north side back to what I would call normal levels. And then with respect to some of the effluent quality information that was in the environmental report, first of all, the plant was in full compliance with its MPDS permit. What we see with an old plant like Southside with very basic technology, the biological activity during the winter months, the bugs, if you will, when it's cold, they slow down. They're not as active, and that affects the overall treatment, and we make accommodations for that as best as we can. But it is an indicator of a very basic technology, very basic plant, 1970s technology. If you compare it to south or north side, that plant runs very steady during these winter months. So again, it's an artifact of that. But again, the plant was in full compliance. It's just a seasonal impact.
Thanks, Carl. Carl. Thank you.
No further questions?
Yeah, with regard, we're talking about the strategic plan as well, correct? All the reports. The innovation fund update, just a question to see where the 50% allocation and a breakdown of how that allocation has been deployed. Is that kind of, once 100% has been deployed, is that going to be kind of a pro rata percentage share of how those funds are allocated?
So
will we see much change in the pie graph?
We are, the Innovation Fund is a first-year pilot and experiment for this organization. So we anticipated asking for more of those funds. The reality by this time, the reality is the level of work that we've taken on has led us to throttle back on some of our, on the progress of some individual initiatives. Also, the intention of the Innovation Fund is to be a living fund. Some things might be operationalized in the future budget. Some things are one-time expenditures. That's a snapshot in time to help you understand where the money's going and how it's being spent. It's probably not predictive of long-term trends, since we'll reconsider the Innovation Fund every year in the budget.
So these allocations may look different 6 months from now, likely will.
Yes, I think that's a fair statement. John, what do you think?
Yeah, correct. So, right, this is, we adopted the budget before we adopted the strategic plan. So the innovation funding this year tied to the strategic plan was kind of a guess. So we put it in a placeholder of $1 million. The intention going forward is now that we have the strategic plan in place, each year we are going to be forecasting the resources, the budgetary resources that we're going to need and that we're going to expend in the upcoming year in order to further these initiatives that are in the strategic plan. So I think that's an accurate statement that these allocations are going to change over time. And, this is not I guess, yeah, you can't look at this and make an inference on, spending in the future, I guess. As Ken said, a lot of these things are one-time. Some of these things are new things that will be operationalized and will no longer be funded through the innovation budget. They'll just be, regular budget expenditures, right? So this is going to be kind of a dynamic thing from year to year to push forward these different initiatives.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on that? Okay. All right, so moving forward with the Committee reports. The executive committee met last week. Those minutes are in your packet for review. We do have an action item to take. So the legislative priorities are listed on page 96 of your packet. We need to approve those. However, I think we have a motion from Rob to amend one of them, or is that an addition? So I have a note that you would like the, sorry, my computer's not cooperating, something about, trying to get, here we go. Your comment was, I move to amend the legislative agenda to add that staff and our lobbyists work with the North Carolina congressional delegation to seek funds for CFPUA projects.
Right.
Okay.
Which, you know, I know we have a resolution that also is a part of the packet that had not been developed when I made that comment there. I think that satisfies that. You know, Ken, Linda, am I out of line here? I just wanted to make sure that was covered in our legislative goals.
Well, the intent of what we've laid out is focused on the state level.
Right.
The conversation that we had, it was, are there any activities to seek funding on the federal level? And right now, the way it's written,
You're right.
our understanding is we're to focus our efforts on the state level.
Yeah, I think you would want to make your amendment because there may be some infrastructure money available.
Yep.
And we need to check into that and see, and at least, you know, you
Yes.
don't ask. So I think that we should have your amendment made and add it to our agenda.
Yes and yes. Do you need language?
Yep, that language.
Let's hear it.
To expand to making requests or inquiries at the federal level for funding for our infrastructure needs.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so that's a motion. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, so all those in favor of adding that amendment to the legislative priority, say aye.
Aye.
Now I need a motion to approve the legislative agenda.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Secondly, part of that, there is specific resolution to approve for the Lower Cape Fear Water and Sewer Authority, the funding for the 10-mile parallel line. So I need a motion to approve that resolution.
Motion to approve.
Okay, Charlie and Rob,
Whatever.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, that's it for executive committee. Long Range Planning Committee?
The Long Range Planning Committee got together. We did not have a quorum, so we do not have minutes or report. No action was taken. There was some information transmitted. That information was recorded and provided to members, and I think the board in general. Is that correct?
To the Long Range Planning Committee, one of my future actions is to share that with the broader board, that link with the broader board.
Okay, so we don't have a formal report, but we were moving along ahead.
Good leaving.
Mr. Norris, Finance Committee?
Yes, the minutes of our February 1st meeting are in your packets, and I'll ask our CFO, John McLean, make a monthly financial presentation.
Good morning. Just run through this quickly. This is year-to-date, 6 months through the year as of December 31st. You can see kind of where the operating side of the house is and capital side of the house is. That comes together on this next slide. And we're looking at a total change in fund balance of a negative $5.9 million. That's due to spending on the capital side of bond funds. And then you can see all the different commitments, assignments, of fund balance with our unassigned fund balance right around $50 million. Any questions there?
Rob, you like that one?
I do. Thank you. Yes. Nice job, Jack.
Here,
What I did want to do is give you an update on where we are with the budget. Staff is working on developing the budget. Last year we made our first presentation on the budget in April, and probably planning to kind of stick to that timeline this year. We may bring something next month in March. I did want to kind of lay out just a broad landscape of kind of what we're facing in terms of developing the operating budget for FY24. So, you know, in terms of personnel, obviously the name of the game is to make sure that our compensation is competitive in order to attract and retain staff. And inflation and the overall job market are big drivers in determining, you know, where that compensation needs to be. You know, we're looking at year-over-year inflation in terms of CPI. I think the latest January number, we're looking at year-over-year inflation of 6.5%. You know, inflation, as you probably know, is coming down from those historic highs, but it's still historically high. So that's one pressure there. And then we continue to operate in a job seekers market, or very similar to the environment that we were facing last year in the development of the FY23 budget. You know, looking at there being 2 jobs available for every job seeker. So, you know, there's a lot of options for job seekers, and that puts pressure on our compensation structure to make sure it's as competitive as it can be in order to you know, reduce our turnover rate, make sure that our jobs are filled. In terms of operating costs, there is a specific inflationary cost index for local governments. It's called the Municipal Cost Index. Year over year, that's around 7%, but we have obviously some items that pertain to water and wastewater you know, utilities that are much higher than that. We're looking at energy costs going up around 10%. We're looking at our chemicals, and I think those contracts were approved a couple of months ago. Chemicals, I guess, what we're looking at calendar year FY23 compared to calendar year 23 compared to calendar year 22 are up 62% on average. So that's a big pressure there. In terms of rates, as you know, our model last year projected another 8.5. You know, we kind of did this 8 and 8 or 8.5 and 8.5 smoothing. Our goal always is to beat that projection. You know, we've been given guidance through this strategic plan from the board that affordability is a key area of focus, and we're always looking to you know, look for efficiencies and you know, keep rates as low as we can. In addition to affordability, we have the AIMS management system that's part of the strategic plan. What that's aimed at is instituting this continuous improvement process throughout the organization, so we can continue to identify efficiencies and become more effective. We're also looking at opportunities to increase non-rate revenues. I think a really good story, this is due to interest rates, right, is you can see here, we were very conservative, not knowing where rates were going to go in developing our investment earnings, you know, projecting where those revenues were going to be. You know, you can see where they are now. In developing the FY24 budget, we're going to project investment earnings to be higher than this. All other things being equal, that's going to reduce pressure on retail rates. So, you know, the other thing too, we're currently working with Raftellus to kind of revisit how we're calculating SDCs. And we may not make that change this year. It just depends on the timing. There's some statutory things that, you know, we have to do. We have to develop the calculation, publish it for 45 days on the website, you know, open it up for public comment. It needs to be adopted by, you know, resolution. So to the extent that we can make all of that fit within our timelines this year, we'll go ahead and do that. But, you know, in this growth environment, you know, if we can look at having you know, an SDC that may be a little higher, is there an opportunity you know, to support you know, an SDC rate that may be a little higher than it currently is, and what that will do is that will reduce pressure on retail rates. That is something that will be part of this budgetary discussion for FY24. And also, looking at rate structure changes, we're not as far along with that with Raftellus for this year, so that may be something that waits till next year. But that is something that is really aimed at driving down retail rates for the average customer. One more consideration is kind of in regards to thinking about the trajectory of future rates. What we're looking at in FY29, when the debt service kicks in on the South Side project, a $250 million project, we're projecting rates for the average customer to be 35% higher in FY29 than they currently are today. That's a big jump over 6 years. What we will incorporate as part of the budgetary discussions for FY24 is maybe moving to a rate smoothing model. We've traditionally done a just-in-time rate making, which kind of results in spikes, to rates. In some years, like last year, a just-in-time model indicated that we needed to increase rates 13%. We smoothed that out over 2 years with 2 8s, right? So under the just-in-time model, what we're looking at, FY24 to FY29, 8.5, 0, 2, 5, 1, and then 13.5 when Southside kicks in. So part of those discussions this year, we'll be talking about maybe doing a little bit of rate smoothing and increasing rates incrementally over that time period. That way, we don't have to, we're not faced with a 1-year decision of raising rates 13.5%, right? So that'll all be baked into that budgetary discussion for FY24. So just wanted to give you a little update there, kind of paint the landscape a little bit. Are there any questions?
Is there anything that could happen between now and 2029 that could offset that? I mean, we've got tremendous growth, new customers coming on. Is there anything that could kind of lessen that?
Sure. It's controlling growth in the operating budget while experiencing that growth. Call it economies of scale, right? Spreading those budgetary costs out to more customers means that rates go down, right? That each customer has to pay goes down. Looking at the SDC, for example, right? Is there an opportunity where we can stay competitive, with our surrounding communities in terms of what that SDC is, but maybe take it up a little bit? That will offset, or that will put downward pressure on retail rates. So I think growth is our biggest opportunity, but at the same time, making sure that we're controlling growth in our operating budget.
I think that smaller bites of the apple over every year tends to be less noticeable. I mean, not trying to, watch the shiny object while we slide it in down there, but, I think that we just went through this over at the Lower Cape here, water and sewer, we didn't have a rate increase for like 17, 18 years. And then all of a sudden we had to do this. I just have always been a proponent of, little bits at a time and to get where you're going instead of 1, 2, 5, 1, 2, 13.
Yeah, and looking back, I mean, since the formation of the authority, I mean, the economic drivers have been relatively stable. There were no, large South Side-like projects, that we've done for a long time. Now, that landscape has changed, it might make sense to move from that just-in-time, model to a rate smoothing model. We've had the luxury, I guess, to operate under a just-in-time rate setting model.
Well, this authority, when it was born, it couldn't have been born. If it had been just business as usual and then it became an authority and continued to go, it would have been one thing. But I mean, it was just like Murphy's Law. Everything that could happen, happened. And the consent decree, bad software that billed people $10,000. It was just, it couldn't have been worse. And they came through it. We came through it. And with flying colors, even given all the negatives. So I think we're in pretty good shape. I've always been proud of the fact that our rates are middling. I mean, a lot of people in the state are way a lot higher than we are.
That's true.
So anyway, I'd just like to keep it that way
Yes, sir.
and still get everything done.
Fingers crossed.
So, John shared with you in detail what keeps me up at night at 3 in the morning. But the first step in solving a problem is recognizing. So we have some rate challenges over the next 6 years. That is why we should be aggressively pursuing special appropriations at both the state and federal level. That is why we should reconsider our system development charges in a responsible way. And that is why we are going to be proposing some right sizing on the wholesale rates for your consideration, as well as finding ways to be more effective and more efficient in the day-to-day operations. So we're going to all-in approach to beat that rate model and beat it significantly is our goal.
Just a quick,
Yes, and I apologize if I missed it, but how much of that rate increase is attributable to PFAS contamination?
So, under a just-in-time last year, the 13.5, or 13.2, I think it was, 71% of that 13.2 was due to PFAS contamination. Now, I guess, we smoothed it out, so I guess what you can say is the 8.5 this past year and the, projected 8.5 for FY24, that, 71% of each of those increases is also attributable to PFAS. Going forward, I haven't really done that analysis because, once you raise rates, we've recouped those costs. So, going forward, what are the incremental costs due to PFAS? I mean, your debt service is remaining stable. That's not really a factor. I think what you're looking at is the timing or the frequency of the filter media replacement and the cost of doing that. That's going to be, I guess, going forward, the biggest PFAS-related driver of rates. In our model, I think what we projected, I can't remember. I think it was $3.7 million in FY23. I think it was $5 million in FY24 and 25. And then going forward, we just applied our same kind of 2% inflator for operating costs to that $5 million. So that's how it's modeled out. Obviously, each year we revisit and do a deep dive into costs when we develop the budget, but that's kind of how it's been built into the model and into those numbers that I said before.
So if we did recover money from Chemours, that would be a downward driver. We would not be facing as much of a race.
That could be a source of funding that would offset rate pressure. Absolutely. Future decision to be made, obviously, but that is an option.
Well, we know that the cost of the plant is increasing rates. So money coming in should help decrease something somewhere. We think.
I think that's fair.
If I might, absolutely. And to put it in perspective, we're going to start on a project in 3 years that is 5 times more expensive than the GAC facility. So our plan is to use the solutions that we bring forward, including bringing Chemours to task, to help solve that larger capital problem.
just a quick comment. Ken, John, I know you're aware of this, but I just want to say it out loud, that when you're looking at tweaking the SDCs, there's a good portion of that basically shifts some of the burden onto the development community. And please be aware of that's not always, it's not an endless supply, of money to go after. We've got to be aware of that. Yeah, I know it's easy to kind of tweak them because they seem to be nameless, faceless, they're just a pot of money. That they're not. And so those may be strange words coming out of my mouth, but I think we need to be careful of that.
We'll of course take that into account, and I've shared this publicly before and with you individually as board members. I see the development community as a critical partner in helping grow ourselves out of our problems of replacing old infrastructure. And we're going to be very mindful of that reality.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
We did have a presentation, just a quick growth policy update that was presented to Finance Committee. And that information, it's information only, it's been included in your packets. And that's all I have.
All right, moving on to Sustainability Committee.
We have no report. We did not meet.
I assume we had our consolidation study update since, or do
Most
we have
of
something
it.
else?
Hopefully most of it, yes. First off, I'd like to recognize HDR and Rafellis and Highfield, and especially Jeff, for the good work that they've done. They've made this a priority. They've put a lot of time and effort into it. They have stayed on schedule and done what we had agreed that they would do, and I think we should recognize them for the excellent work that they have done. However, and this is not any reflection on them whatsoever, but because of the large amount of information that's out there to consume, I mean, what we're essentially looking at is reviewing and trying to adopt a second CIP program for the town of Wrightsville Beach in conjunction with the one that we are also doing for the utility for CFPUA. We're having to do a rates study and there's a lot of information to consume, and it is really taking up the time of Ken and John and Carl, because all of this is added to their standard project. I mean, it's their standard workload. You know, we have doubled, if not tripled, their workload, and I just don't believe that we can do especially taking on the growth policy. I don't believe that we can complete all of the careful consideration of all these topics within the time frame of the original study to be completed in April. And it most likely will require another month or two to finish that work up. And so certainly wanted to let y'all know that probably more time is required. It's certainly not because anybody has failed to do what they should have done. It's probably more a function of they have done such an excellent job of what they're supposed to do that they have provided us a lot of information that needs to be gone over and needs good discussion. So I don't know that there's any real action that's needed, but I just wanted to give everybody a heads up that frankly, the very aggressive schedule that was adopted on the front end of this is probably going to slip a month or two.
Mr. Sneeden, I'd like to add to it, the legal staff is really putting a lot of pressure on the rest of the staff because discovery is full-blown and depositions are starting in the Camorras lawsuit. So it's been a lot of work on staff. Especially Carl and Beth and Frank and others have had to do a lot with just getting documents and getting prepared for the depositions.
Well, from the board, I know that we've got the right two people in Deans and Larry working this. I know that.
Well, our part is minor. I mean, we're reviewing work that is being done by others, but your staff is just going full blast on this,
Good.
and they are doing excellent work and coming to us with excellent recommendations. But we don't want to put such high expectations on them that they are having to work every night and every weekend instead of just the occasional night and weekend.
Our partners, we've shared this information with our partners with Brunswick Beach. We'll be hearing the same thing tonight. And their likewise staff is struggling to absorb, describe, and recommend. So a month or two, let's say two, we'll revisit and see if we can get back on track. A key component of making some recommendations will be this board's feedback on wholesale rates and SDCs.
All right, that means any old business come before the board? Okay. Two quick closing comments. I know last month we recognized Sarah, Judy, and Makiba for pursuing their clerk certification. And I just want to give a shout out to Makiba. She applied for a scholarship and got a scholarship to cover her tuition. So just want to give her that shout out. And secondly, I hope to see you all Friday at the grand opening for the Gap in Ribbon Cutting. Did you have something, Commissioner?
Yes, you did a great job in the video that's running on Facebook.
Oh, Lord, what video is running on Facebook? do I know there's a video?
I'm glad to see Vaughn out the picture.
Oh, the commercial.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is.
Great job.
It is
I mean,
very
just kudos, thumbs up.
Go ahead.
Is there any update on the Rock Hill Road situation?
I'd be glad to provide that. As part of your packet, we briefed in detail the long-range planning committee members who could be there, and we recorded that and want to send that around. We also carried that same briefing to the finance committee, and from that, staff have some next steps that we're working on. So this is actually on page 144 of your packet. If you would like to go back and look at some of the details, we've sat down with New Hanover County, and New Hanover County has developed with us a plan to do a couple of things. One, modify an existing grant program within New Hanover County to see if we can open it up and target water stations or connection points for communities to address the immediate need. So New Hanover County staff are working on revamping a grant program that exists today, a connection program today, and we've agreed as staff at CFPUA, if they revamp that program, we'll apply on behalf of Rock Hill and any other community. We'll help develop those grants and help develop the numbers for those. So that addresses the water station issue. You will see in New Hanover County's budget a proposal to fund a study to do a prioritization update. In 2007, there was a prioritization study for failed well and septic systems. County staff has preliminarily agreed to put before their commissioners a proposal to fund an update of that study. The purpose of which is to prioritize not only septic system removal, but extension of water lines for groundwater contamination. With that prioritization list, our staff has agreed to develop grant applications for the community endowment and for any SRF funding that may come available. Then finally, we're all waiting to see if we receive a grant for the Oakley Road community to solve about a third of the problem that's in the Rock Hill community area. So we'll know this month whether we receive that $12 million grant or not. Finally, your chair and I are meeting with the Rock Hill community residents themselves at the community center on the 23rd to describe what we're doing and what some of their options may be.
Thank you.
And we had an earlier meeting with their leadership to go over.
The Rock Hill Road
The Rock-
leadership.
Yeah, the Rock Hill Road, like four of their community leaders.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, I think we need to adjourn and go into closed session.
We don't adjourn.
Oh, we don't adjourn, I'm sorry. Motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
To discuss
Okay.
CFPUA versus Camorra.